Okay. Good. All right. We're glad to have everyone today. And we're blessed to have the Lucas family. Even Brother Asher's here with them. What do you know about that? Appreciate them. On our Zoom meeting, I've been talking, on the book of Hebrews. I'm going through it chapter at a time. So far, 2 chapters at a Zoom meeting, but today I want to talk a little bit about the mark of the beast, because I had a question last night on a Zoom meeting with the Dominican Republic. One of the new pastors there was asking about it, and everything that I covered on it, I thought, I'm not sure I've ever even did all this in church, at one setting anyway. So I thought I'd mention a little bit more on it. I know that we all know, that this is not a literal mark. We understand. But I think you ought to be able to explain to other people that you talk to, that your acquaintances, and be able to give them a good explanation concerning this. I was in a Subway shop recently, and I told it here one morning how this girl that was waiting on us, I can't remember what happened. She had on a mask. This was back when COVID was still pretty profound going strong. And I can't remember what came up, but I said, have you had your vaccine? She said, no, and I ain't getting it. I said, you're not? She said, it may be the mark of the beast. I said, well, let me put your mind to rest. It's not the mark of the beast. She said, how do you know? I said, because I know the Bible. And there was people standing around, and boy, they just hovered in around me, And I told her, I said, you could give me all kinds of shots, put all kinds of chips inside me, tattoo me all over. You can put all kind of natural marks you want onto me, but you can't separate me from Jesus Christ. The only way you could do that is mess with my thinking. And so I started talking a little bit about it. And so people started saying, well, what? They started asking questions. I thought the store manager was going to run me out of there. It was one of them places where there's a store and a Subway in it, Anyway, I know they never heard what I was saying. Some of them was interested. And she said, I ain't taking no chances. Anyway, I didn't convince her of anything, I could tell that day. It is true that this message is not for everyone. It never will be for everyone. It's only for those that have ears to hear and eyes to see, and those that have an open enough mind that God can deal with. One of the questions this brother asked was, when is the mark of the beast going to start? I said, it started 2,000 years ago. Actually, more than that. Ever since there's been a dragon world power, there's been a beast system. The 13th chapter of the book of Revelations, if you want to go there, it starts out, John said, I stood on the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up out of the sea. I think you ought to make note that it came up out of the sea. having 7 heads and 10 horns, upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the names of blasphemy. And of course, we know that this is talking about Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, Medo Persia, Greece, Babylon. Did I say Babylon? Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, Medo Persia, Greece, and Rome. How many is that? Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, Medo Persia, Greece, and Rome. 6 heads. Of course, and I know many of the brethren still teach what we all used to teach, was that that pagan Rome was a 6th head and papal Rome was a 7th. I just say to you, consider this. It was still Rome. It never changed. The beast didn't change. It just changed authority. It went from pagan to papacy. And, of course, Brother Leninger taught this, but I think he was right myself. But I'm not trying to force it on anybody, but I do believe that Rome was the 6th head. I still believe that the United States will be the 7th head. And I'll explain why here in just a minute, but that's not my point today, and I don't want to elaborate on that. Verse 2 says, "And the beast I saw was likened to a leopard." That was Greece. If you read in the 7th chapter of, if you read the 7th chapter of Daniel, he explains these animals as beasts. He just can't explain Rome. He calls it a terrible beast. Then he shows a 2-horned beast, a little 2-horned beast that plucks up 3 horns. Which was the papacy. So these evolved. They evolved out of the world. That's what the sea means. The sea is peoples, nations, and tongues. These were ungodly nations. They evolved out of the world. Here, this beast that John saw, it was like a leopard or like Greece, and its feet was as the feet of a bear, which was Medo Persia, and his mouth is the mouth of a lion, which was Babylon. So Rome evolved out of the Grecian dragon power, and it had similarities to the beast before it, which was Greece and Babylon. And the dragon gave him his power. That dragon that gave the papacy. This is talking about the papacy in AD 325. And Constantine gave him his power. He accepted Christianity, and therefore he gave the Pope power and a seat of great authority. And anyway, that's all I'll say about that for right now. But if you go down to the 11th verse, and I'll just refer to this because I mentioned the sea. And here's another, I beheld another beast come up out of the earth, not the sea. That's one of my statements about believing the 7th head is the United States. The earth, in the book of Revelation, the earth, primarily in prophecies referring to religion. And the United States didn't evolve out of the worldly dragon powers. The United States it evolved from a religious power. Our forefathers fled from the Eastern world to the Western world to find freedom of religion. And they were, it came out of religion. That's where it came from. Our forefathers came from the Reformation that started with Martin Luther, or really started before that, but Martin Luther got got the first stronghold of the beginning of the Reformation. And then it says here, it says, come up out of the earth having two horns like a lamb. The horns in the Bible are powers. And these two horns like a lamb, I believe, is the United States civil and religious powers. Those are the two powers that our Constitution was written on, giving freedom, separation of church and state, but even our civil powers, the writers of our Constitution, were God-fearing men, and they based the laws of America on the Bible. They were like a lamb. They were lamb-like in the beginning. They were trying to be as close to Christ as they knew how to be, but they understood the dictatorial function of the Catholic Church, of the beast system that they fled from, and so they wrote in the Constitution that there would be a separation from church and state, that the church could not, the state couldn't impose on the church, and the church wouldn't involve itself with the civil laws. They meant to keep civil peace by civil law, and they based that on the things of God, that they came here, because that's why they came. And this was a Christian nation. The first president I ever heard saying it's not a Christian nation was Barack Obama. He made that statement several times while he was a president publicly, that this is not a Christian nation. And he was right. It's not the government of this nation is certainly not Christian, is corrupt. But it started out with two horns like a lamb. But then it says, and he spake as a dragon. So a dragon power, whatever this other beast is, you can name it whatever you want to. Most men I've talked to don't want to say what it is. They just want to say, well, it's civil and religious power. They'll go that far. In my thinking, how in the world could God not judge America? And what other nation is as strong worldwide that's almost a dragon power? But I will say that it's not came into a full dragon yet. But when it becomes a dragon power and rules the world, Brother Leniger always said, here's how you'll know when it becomes a dragon power, is when it taxes the world. You know, Donald Trump, he did put that in works. He never got it done, but he was going to charge every nation for America using its military to police the world. He put that before the United Nations while he was president. He said, if we're going to police the world, we're going to have to be paid for it. We can't keep funding. Of course, he's all about money, you know. By the way, I don't know how many of y'all have read that our governor, Asa Hutchinson, has thrown in a few hints that he may run for president. I wish he would, and I wish he'd win, but I doubt he's got a chance. He's too honest, in my opinion. And he's a Christian man. He's a godly man. But anyway, so this dragon power, and let me read the next verse. It says, and he exercises, verse 12, he exerciseth all the power of the first beast before him. Now this is one that's going to set up a mark of the beast and make the Pope the eighth head. So you're going to have to figure that out, if the Pope's going to set up an image to the beast and make himself the eighth head if he is the seventh head. Look in verse 17, chapter 17 right quick. Okay, I want to go down here to, let's see, verse 9. And let's start in verse 8. And the beast that thou sawest was and is not. That was this 13th chapter, the papacy, that he lost his power. 1798, Napoleon French general, put him in prison, ended his power. He was and is not, shall ascend out of the bottomless pit. We all know the bottomless pit's a foundation. It's a religious system, doesn't have a foundation. And goeth into perdition, and they that dwell on the earth shall wonder whose names are not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they behold the beast that was and is not and yet is. And here is the mind which hath wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sitteth. There's 7 kings. 5 are fallen: Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, Medo Persia, and Greece. 1 is Rome, and the other is not yet come, and when he cometh, he must continue a short space. That's what I'm telling you. The United States will have a short-lived dragon, be a dragon power, which I say is the 7th head, but it won't live long because it's going to set up the image to the beast and make the Pope the 8th head. Food for thought. So let's go on back to the 13th chapter, because I'm wanting to deal with the mark of the beast. Okay, so he sets up this image of the beast, verse 15. And he hath power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive the mark in their right hand or in their foreheads. In the same way that the righteous people of God and those that are seeking to make the bride of Christ are going to be sealed in their foreheads. If you read the 14th chapter, the first verse of the book of Revelation, it shows this 144,000 that had their father's names in their foreheads. That gives you a good clue of what's going to be, what this mark of the beast is in people's foreheads. It's going to be in their right hand or in their foreheads. The right hand's a ministry, and there's many, many ministers of these organizations that will join up with the beast system. In fact, they're going to say, peace and safety before sudden destruction comes upon them, because they're going to say the bodies come together. We don't longer have all these organizations divided. The Catholic Church is no longer divided. God has healed the body. And that's how they're going to look at it. And there's, it's been several years now since the leader of the Methodist organization said we need the Pope as the leader of religion in this country. He was promoting that. And they'll all promote that. In fact, they're getting further. They're becoming less and less divided from the Catholic teachings. So a ministry is going to, the ministry that will not accept that the body of Christ's teachings are going to turn against it, just like Judaism did the same thing in the end of the Jewish world. They rejected Christ as being the Messiah. They rejected everyone that followed him. They rejected the body of Christ. And what they planted in people's minds to mark them was the doctrine of the law, which was in a terrible fallen condition. Split, separated many secular different groups among the Judaizers. You know, Pharisees, Sadducees, Elamites, Essenes, Herodians, and go on with the different secular groups back then that were separated. And Jesus showed them that they didn't understand the Bible anymore. They had missed God. And he wouldn't join up with any of their systems. And so here, the right hand's the ministry is going to join the image of the beast, and those that receive it in their foreheads are just going to be receiving the doctrine, the teachings of these false doctrines of Christianity. It's all divided, separated. It's nowhere near close to coming to unity, and it won't. Not those that pull away. So he goes on and says, and no man might buy or sell, save he that have the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. Then he says, here's wisdom. In other words, you're not going to be able to preach the gospel if you don't belong to that system. You can't sell it. And you're going to be able to have services somewhere that's outside of the beast. You can't buy either. And so it's going to cause both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in the right hand or in their forehands. No man can buy or sell, save he that have the mark or the name of the beast or the number of the name. Here is wisdom. Let him that understandeth count the number of the beast. For the number, it is a number of man. His number is 666. 666. So, man's made up of body, soul, and spirit. And that's exactly what you're going to see. The body of the beast is going to be put together by man. God's not going to be in that. The soul of it, the mind, the teachings, the mindset of it, the heart of it is man's putting together. Their doctrine, their influence, their ideology. And then it'll have the spirit of man. It ain't going to have the spirit of God, but it's the spirit of man, in that it's all man. It's all a body of man, the mind of man, and the spirit of man that's going to build that system. There is already a mark of the beast. If we go down in the 14th chapter right quick, it says in the 6th verse, here John said, I saw another angel. Angels, that's a messenger. This is a ministry. Here's what John saw. I saw another angel fly in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel to preach to them that dwell on the earth, and to every nation and kindred and tongue and people, saying with a loud voice, fear God and give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment is come. And worship him that made heaven and the earth and the sea and the fountains of waters. Years ago, the teachings on this was this was a Jewish ministry after God grafts the Jewish ministry back in. That's impossible. It's impossible because that's not going to happen until the millennial. He's going to graft them back in. That ministry will work down through the millennial. This is still dealing with the mark of the beast way before Armageddon, even before God judges Babylon. And so, and it tells us that in this chapter, having the everlasting. Wouldn't you like to be a part of that church that has a ministry that has the everlasting gospel? It will last forever. There won't be any falsehood in it. Every liar is going to have his part in the lake of fire. If he don't get corrected from his lying, God help me. Every preacher preaching something different, somebody's lying, and it's very possible all of us are telling something that's not exactly right. But we trust that God's going to get us corrected of that before the eternal judgment of the lake of fire comes, that God will help us. But anyway, and they got three messages in this chapter. The first message in chapter 7 is, fear God and give Him glory. For the hour of His judgment, that's the last prophetical hour, is come. We don't fear God enough. I can tell you that right now. We don't have the proper fear of God, and we don't give Him the proper honor and glory. We just hadn't got there yet. Not to where when God's judgment's set up and there's more harsh judgment. Which, you know, there was a man in the campground a year ago that got up in the campground and said, God fixing to judge this body, and you better get your lives cleaned up, starting with the ministry. I don't know how many people heard that or remember it, but it was definitely said, and I certainly believe that man was a true prophet. Verse 8 said, and there followed another angel saying, Babylon is fallen, is fallen. See, that message has not gone forth yet. Anybody preaching that we're already preaching that message doesn't understand the Scriptures. It's not going to be till the last prophetical hour. In fact, chapter 11 in the book of Revelation tells us that the seventh angel, the seventh trumpet sounds in the 11th chapter. That's the last prophetical hour, and that's how important those last 15 years is the whole half. From the 11th chapter of the book of Revelation to the 22nd chapter, is half the book is dedicated to that 15 years. That's how important they are. So, our message is going to be, fear God and give Him glory. Babylon is fallen, is fallen. That's when we'll call God's people out of Babylon. Now, yes, we can all say, you know, God showed me Babylon's fallen. I was telling this man last night, I said, God's trying to show you Babylon's in a pitiful condition. It's in a fallen condition. But it ain't fell near to where it's going to fall when the image of the beast is set up. It will be a lot worse condition that it's in today. And God's going to get all of His people out of it before He removes the candle, before He removes the grindstone, before He removes the trumpeters, the craftsmen, the musicians, the harpers, before He removes the voice of the bride and the voice of the bridegroom. See, all that's still out there. God's still trying to save His people that are out there. But they'll have to come out of that. They can't stay in Babylon, especially after the mark of the image is set up. Let's read a little more about that then. So the next third angel, verse 9, third message, saying with a loud voice, if any man worship the beast and his image. That's the first time that it includes the image after the image is set up. The beast is the Catholic Church. Its image is an image of it. There's plenty of people taking the mark of the beast today. There ain't anybody took the mark of the image yet. That ain't even been set up yet. The same will drink of the wine of the wrath of God. So the beast and his image, and receiveth his mark in their forehead or in his hand, the same will drink the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out without mixture in the cup of his indignation, and shall be tormented with fire from brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and the presence of the Lamb. I could go into a teaching on that and explain it, but I don't have time to do all that right now. Another verse that I've mentioned to you several times is verse 13. which I think everybody ought to listen and consider what this verse says. And I heard a voice from heaven saying unto me, Write, Blessed are the dead which die in the Lord from henceforth. Yea, saith the Spirit, that they may rest from their labors, and their works do follow them. The question you have to ask, why is it more blessed to die in the Lord from that point forward? If you can make perfection before the seventh trumpet, why is it more blessed to be able to die and rest and cease from your labors if you could do it before the church is restored? It's a pretty strong verse right there. You can enter into your rest from that time forth once a church is restored. I just don't see that being possible before that time. I don't think we've got enough from God yet to do that. Of course, everybody knows I believe in a, and I'm going to teach on this here pretty soon on the 23rd, 24th, 25th, 26th, 27th, 28 chapters of Isaiah, and show you why, more verses and more reasoning why I see a resurrection down here in the restored church. And I still believe in a Matthew 27:52 resurrection. It's as clear to me as it can be in Isaiah. In Isaiah 26, if you understand the context of Isaiah's prophecy right there, I don't see how you can deny it. Anyway, I know that we brethren don't all agree on that. But anyway, I'm just telling you. I'm trying to give you what I'm seeing. I'm still trying to leave you with an open mind to consider. We need to consider everything. I'm still listening. Whether you think I am or not, I am listening. If somebody can help me with something that makes more sense, the Scriptures back up more, then I think I've got to change. I don't think I have a choice. So, and then of course, he sees one like unto the Son of Man sitting on a cloud, having a golden crown in his head and a sharp sickle, and he's told to reap the earth. So the harvest of the earth is going to start here, but there's going to be these messages, and one of them is going to be, if you receive the mark of the beast and his image, the wrath of God's going to get you. Okay, so now if you look at, and I'm trying to compare this taking the mark of the beast in your forehead the same way that it was done in the early church, how that the Judaizers separated and convinced the people not to have anything to do with the Apostle Paul was one of them. I was talking to a preacher yesterday morning. He called me and he was talking to me, and he got to preaching to me. And he said, Brother Smith, there was 12 oxen that the laver sat on. Said those 12 oxen, they didn't have the ability to reproduce themselves. And he said, we got to be like them oxen. I let him talk a while, and I said, if you let me say something to you without being offensive, I'd like to help you on something. He said, what is it? I said, it's not true that oxen can't reproduce themselves. That's false teaching. I've heard it too. But I said, research it. There wouldn't be any oxen if they couldn't reproduce themselves. They'd go extinct. I said, but there is such a thing as castrating them and removing their ability for them to pull a cart, for them to be workable animals. That was probably done. But I said, and we have to have, God has to help us to have that kind of work of the Spirit where we don't reproduce ourselves or preach our own doctrine or work in that manner. But these 12 oxen had their backs turned to one another. And then I gave him, I said, look, let me give you a little nugget on Paul not being able to kick against the pricks. I said, I'm a farm boy. I grew up on the farm. And I said, when you hook 2 horses, 2 oxen, whatever, up to pull a plow, pull a cart, or whatever, you have to put a harness over their whole body. That harness straps over them. It's connected across the shoulders where it can't come off. It's connected across the rump, and it has metal rings in it that you can attach to. And in the back, and what they pull a cart or plow with is either called a single tree or a double tree, and what that is it's a wooden bar about that long, maybe that long. It's got rings in the end of it, and a little chain connects to the rings that's on that harness that connects to that single tree. And that single tree is connected to either the plow or the cart, wagon, whatever they're pulling. I said that's how they pull it, and that's why that single tree, when they turn, it's got to turn. It's kind of like it's kind of like being able to turn wheels on a car. You can't just drag the wheels; you'd tear them off of a wagon or a plow. But that single tree will turn and make a little wider turn. I said, when you train horses or cattle or whatever, and you hook them up to a plow or a single tree, or if you've got 2 single trees. Each one of them are hooked up to a single tree. That's called a double tree. There's 2 of them. They bore holes in that, and they take wooden pegs that are sharpened, sharp points on the end of them. They put those pegs in those single trees. You take a new oxen calf, or you take a new horse, whatever you're going to train, and you hook them up to that single tree, they'll kick. They'll try to kick their way out. When they kick, they'll stick those pricks. They'll stick those sticks in their legs, and it hurts them. They won't kick very many times. They'll quit kicking because they'll see it'll hurt them too bad. Second day, they're going to be so sore they ain't going to kick at all. That's what the Lord was telling Paul. It's hard for you to kick against the pricks. Paul was a Pharisee. He was working against the body of Christ, but there was something God was convicting his heart when he saw the stoning of Stephen, when he saw all that was going on, and even though he followed after, put many in prison, it was still something was tugging at his heart that this ain't right. What we're doing is not right. And God finally got him out of that system and showed him how blind that he was. Anyway, I'm just going to throw that in for extra measure there. So in verse 8, chapter 18, I've just got a few minutes left here. In chapter 18, we all know these verses, but I just wanted to rehearse this in your mind, that this has not took place yet, and it's not going to take place till the last prophetical hour. After these things, I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power. This is Jesus working through a restored ministry, and the earth was lightened with his glory. It was, a sevenfold light. God gave he's going to give a sevenfold light in the restored church, and he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the great is fallen, and is become the habitation of devils, and the hold of every foul spirit, and a cage of every unclean and hateful bird. And I think we ought to look at Jeremiah 5:27 right here just quickly. If we start in the 26th verse, look what Jeremiah had to say. He said, For among my people are found wicked men. They lie wait as he that setteth snares. They set a trap. They catch men. As a cage is full of birds, so are their houses full of deceit. Therefore they are become great and waxen rich. Waxen fat, they shine. Yea, they overpass the deeds of the wicked. They judge not the cause of the fatherless. Yet they prosper, and the right of the needy do they not judge. Shall I not visit for these things, saith the Lord? Shall not my soul be avenged on such a nation as this? I just can't help but read that. Every time I read about this, it's become as a cage of unclean and ever unclean and hateful bird. For all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. See, when there becomes a dragon power, that is a world-ruling power. Civil power married to or conjoined with a religious power. We've never been under dragon power, not in our lifetimes. But if you live long enough, you will. Because when the eighth head, when the image of the beast is set up, you're going to see a dragon power, and all nations are going to drink of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. The kings of the earth will commit fornication with her. Many of them already have. And the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies. When I say many have, I'm talking about the beast. They've committed fornication with the beast, the image, not the image, but the beast, Catholicism. But they will commit fornication with the image of the beast. Many more will do that than have done at this time. And I heard another voice from heaven saying, Come out of her, my people, that you be not partakers of her sins, and that you receive not of her plagues, for her sins have reached unto heaven, and God has remembered her iniquities. Reward her even as she rewarded you, and double unto her according to her works. In the cup which she has filled to her double. How much she hath glorified herself, lived deliciously. So much torrent sorrow give her, for she saith in her heart, I sit a queen, I am no widow, and shall see no sorrow. Therefore her plagues come in one day, death and mourning, famine. And she shall be utterly burned in the fire, so strong is the Lord who judges her. It's talking about the day of the Lord, and that will be from the time the church is restored until Armageddon. The same as from the day of Pentecost until AD 70. Then he said, And the kings of the earth who have committed fornication and lived deliciously with her shall bewail her and lament for her, and they shall see the smoke of her burning standing afar off for the fear of her torment, saying, Alas, alas, that great city Babylon, that mighty city, for in 1 hour, the last prophetical hour, is thy judgment come. And the merchants of the earth will weep and mourn over her, and no man buyeth their merchandise anymore. Remember, you can't buy or sell. Merchandise of her gold and silver, precious stones, pearl, fine linen, purple, silk, scarlet, thyine wood, and all manner of vessels of ivory, and all manner of vessels of precious wood, brass, iron, marble, cinnamon, odors, ointments, frankincense, wine, oil, fine flour, wheat, bees, sheep, horses, chariots, slaves, souls of men. And the fruits that thy soul, all those things were things of the temple and of Judaism. And the fruits that, which are just a type here, thy soul lusteth after and are departed from thee, and all things which were dainty and goodly and are departed from thee, and thou shalt find them no more at all in the surgeons of the earth. The merchants of these things which were made rich by her shall stand afar off for the fear of her torment, weeping and wailing, saying, Alas, alas, that great city which was clothed with fine linen, purple, scarlet, decked with gold, precious stones, and pearls, for in 1 hour so great riches is come to naught. And every shipmaster, and all the company of ships. See, all these religious systems are in ships. We're all above the sea in religion. Religion's higher than the world. So we're all in a ship. All these shipmasters, all the company and ships and sailors, and many as trade by the sea stood afar off, cried when they saw the smoke of her burning, saying, What city is like unto this city? And they cast dust on their heads and cried, weeping and wailing, saying, Alas, alas, that great city wherein were made rich all that had ships in the sea by reason of her costliness. For in 1 hour she made desolate. Notice, rejoice over her, thou heaven, and you holy apostles and prophets, for God hath avenged you on her. Remember in the 5th seal, those souls under the altar. You'll never convince me those were bride members in the early church. That those seals are chronological order: the white horse, the red horse, the pale horse, then the souls under the altar. These people were martyred by the Catholic Church, what was after the pale horse. And God told them, I can't avenge you. When are you going to avenge our blood? He said, I can't. You'll have to wait. Why? Because God couldn't judge Babylon. He couldn't judge Babylon in A.D. 538 or thereafter. That's when the Catholic Church got full control. But they had to wait, not until the church is restored and your fellow brethren are killed like you are. And right here is where, when God judges Babylon, and He judges it eternally. The false prophet and the beast and the false prophet are cast in the lake of fire, which is second death. It'll never exist again once God judges this. Once He avenges the iniquity of the falsehood that's brought on God's people. Those people were martyred because of their faith. But God couldn't judge that back there. If He had judged it, He would have never got a vengeance for them people. But they had to wait until God was able and iniquity had reached its fullness among the Gentiles, and then God could judge that system. And He did. He avenged. Right there, He says that. Where did He say that? Where did I just read that? Right there in verse 20. Rejoice over her, thou heaven, you holy apostles and prophets, for God hath avenged you on her. You can couple that with the 19th chapter, verse 2. Just look at verse 1 and 2. This is after God judges Babylon. After these things, I heard a great voice of much people in heaven saying, Hallelujah! Salvation and glory and honor and power unto the Lord God, for true and righteous are His judgments, for He hath judged the great whore which did corrupt the earth with her fornication, and hath avenged the blood of His servants. Right there is where God gets vengeance. You just have to understand that I really believe that our brethren, what they saw back when we got most of these insights on the book of Revelation, God's gave a lot more understanding today. And we've had to adjust. If those brothers had it all, then we have a restored church. They didn't have it all. William Souders did not have it all. He said, right now, you brothers are going to have to preach my doctrine. But he said, the day will come that you'll have your doctrine to preach. He understood that he had the outline and that things were going to have to be improved upon. We can't be so foolish to get so solidified in what generation we come up in, or you're going to be a prisoner of that generation. There'll be greater things. I asked Brother Leninger one time, I said, if you come up in the resurrection, are you going to be teaching us? He said, that'd be like Henry Ford resurrecting, trying to tell y'all how to build a Ford car today. He said, what I'm going to be resurrecting for is to hear what y'all got to say, because I'm going to need it. He realized there's something greater coming. So he goes on here, then he says, thus with violence shall the great city. I'm back in the 21st verse. It says, and a mighty angel took up a stone like a great millstone and cast it in the sea. That'll be the work of the apostolic ministry of this restored church. Just like the second trumpet, that a mountain was plucked up and cast into the sea, a mountain was cast into the sea. That's what the apostles did back there. We'll do the same thing down here with like we'll take a great millstone and cast it into the sea. In other words, what they're teaching out there, we just like the apostles of the early church taught that you don't need to believe none of this. And I'm going to show you why. I'm going to show you that they're teaching something that's wrong and false. And they've cast it back into the world. It had no more influence over God's people in the body of Christ. And the voice of harpers, musicians, pipers, trumpeters shall be heard no more at all in thee. No craftsman, whatever craft you shall be found no more in thee. And the sound of the millstone shall be heard no more at all in thee. And the light of the candle shall shine no more at all in thee. And the voice of the bridegroom, the bride, shall be heard no more at all in thee. For thy merchants were great men of the earth, and by thy sorceries were all nations deceived. See, all of these things are still out there in Babylon. The voice of the bride, the bridegroom, the candle, the millstone, the craftsmen, the trumpeters. He's not ready to judge that yet. He's going to come out of her, my people, before he judges that, and it's done away with. In the 19th chapter, you see that's where the beast and the false prophet are cast in the lake of fire. It's done away with forever. Okay. And verse 24, in her was found the blood of prophets, saints, and all of them slain upon the earth. I'll stop there for today because we're running out of time. But if there's any questions or comments, we certainly will take them right quick.
Brother Smith, there at the end where the voice of the bride is no longer heard, the millstones cast in the sea. Those people coming out, would you consider any of those people to be overcomers or just in their relationship with God, or will they be...
The ones that are coming out?
Yes.
Come out of her, my people?
Yes, sir.
I think many of them will make the bride. That last prophetical hour, God's going to harvest many people. They'll come out, they'll receive this message, and many of them, I think many of them will make the bride. They're coming out of her for that purpose. God, that's our message. God's making up His bride in the end of this world in a restored church, and that bride will rule and reign for 1,000 years and make up the new earth. But yeah, I think there's many people that'll come out of her that came in late in the end, just like those that came in late in the end of the Jewish world, still had time to make it. So yeah, I think they will. I don't think He's just calling them out of there, to save them for the new earth. I think they'll have an opportunity with a sevenfold light. As long as that sevenfold light shining, I think there'll be people making the bride. Well, half the people are gone. I've run everybody off nearly. I better shut up or the rest of y'all leave me. We'll take a break. See you upstairs in about 30 minutes. I think most of them went to be in the band. Hopefully that was the deal.